Hey, this is Dirthead Dave from Dirt Every Day. You are about to listen to a new episode of the Builder Sessions.
Welcome to the Builder Sessions, a podcast where we chat with your favorite builders.
We get to know them, their stories, and hopefully inspire you to get off the couch and build something cool. I'm Hoff.
And I'm Rosie. And on this episode, we chat with Dirthead Dave from Dirt Every Day on MotorTrend Plus. We talk about his unique life experiences that have shaped who he is today, the benefit of finding the right blend of hands-on experience and formal education to grow in the areas you're passionate about, and how authentic relationships with like-minded people have the potential to open doors for you in the future.
Please enjoy our interview with Dave.
Dave, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it. I've been watching Dirt Every Day for a super long time, and I'm a big fan. So
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for following along. It's been a pretty wild ride so far.
yeah, we're gonna get into that. But for those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with your work and kind of what you've been up to, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm co-host on Dirt Every Day, which is a off-road sort of TV show. It's on MotorTrend. It's also kind of made for the MotorTrend app. So it was basically a friend of mine that was in the magazine industry and knew to get into videos, and we sort of rolled into it together. So co-host with my friend Fred Williams over there, and 12 seasons into it now. I think I've been helping Fred for the last 6 or 7 of them.
That's awesome. So how did you get into tinkering? And because everyone's got a story, and I want to know how you got into it, how you got into four-wheel drives. I know you're big into mini trucks. You also did that cool lead sled thing. How did you get started in customizing and automotive, and like what's your background?
Well, basically, I went from riding BMX bikes every day of my life and working on bikes and working at a bike shop to turning 16 and getting into cars and stereos. So what happened there was in high school, I had a little Nissan Sentra that I lowered and done a bunch of work to. And getting through high school was sort of the turning point. I had a group of friends that were into muscle cars, and I had a group of friends that were into import tuners, and I had a group of friends that were getting into mini trucks. And the muscle car guys, all their stuff was always broken. And the import tuner guys, they were getting in trouble for, stealing spoilers and wheels and doing insurance scams. And I was like, man, I don't want to do either of those. I saw the guys building mini trucks that were actually like learning how to fabricate and do their own work. So I sort of trended that way. I ended up apprenticing basically for a shop in Escondido, California that was like on the forefront of doing airbag suspension. So I was a hang around and a shop sweeper for like a year and a half before I actually got to do any fabrication work or got offered a job there.
I think that's a really important point to make because I think, especially with our Instagram kind of culture, instant gratification and what people are used to, we find Corey and I are both teachers, and we find sometimes when we hear the stories of kids going out to look for jobs and they find out they have to be a floor sweep for
work for it
a number of time, a little bit of time, work for it. And they're like, what? It's like, hey man, like
Can't just go for the gravy right away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I put in a lot of time before I got a chance to do the actual work. It was I was basically an indentured servant for 9 months. And it worked out. I had become a hang-around at the shop, and we actually did a bunch of work on the first mini truck I ever bought. We airbagged it and body dropped it and did all this stuff to it. And I ended up working it took 9 months to pay off the work that we did on my truck in trade. So it was basically, I was going to college and I was changing oil at Saturn. And then I was going up to this shop called the Chop Shop, nights and weekends, and sort of working off the trade work that we had done on my little Toyota pickup.
That's awesome.
So
How
those late teenage and early 20 years, I was hustling like crazy.
How was that being involved with like being young and getting into like airbag suspension and stuff? That seems like you're just kind of thrown into an awesome environment, and it's not like maybe conventional, you start in the lube bay, different things, but kind of getting thrown into that, and just at the beginning of that, how was that experience for you being young?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that was sort of, we were on the forefront of it. I mean, that was probably 1997. So it was cool. I really appreciate more of the friendships that I made and the traveling I was able to do in those years. Just because, a bunch of those people I still talk to every day nowadays. So whether they're into, Jeeps or off-road or mini trucks still or whatever, it's just, those were some of my like lifetime friends. So that was the best part, really, was just being part of that community. And then, I was young enough getting into it, and I didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities, so I was able to travel and go to car shows all over the country, and a lot of it was pretty fun, because I would fly, or I'd drive out to Texas to go to a truck show, and with no money in my pocket, but I'd drive out there a week ahead of time and help my buddy Rob in his shop, help him finish a truck or two and make some money while I was there to pay for the trip. So just some of those things that you get to do in your 20s or late teens, where you can kind of, find your way and just sort of fake it till you make it,
Oh yeah, I know that. So Dave, I'm loving the story so far. My question is, it sounds like you have a really awesome work ethic. Now, how did you develop that? Was there did you just, when your time, was it who you were apprenticing under, or was it someone in your personal life? How did you develop such a strong work ethic? Because just kind of what you described, going down there with no money and then working this to pay off the weekend, or, you had another job, but you're working after hours at this chop shop to pay off the work that they did on your mini truck. That's not every kid that age is, especially nowadays, looks at things that way. So how did you develop that work ethic?
I really couldn't tell you. It just seemed, going even farther back, I just started working when I was really young. I guess it was just sort of ingrained in me, because I started working the summer after 7th grade. So I was washing cars. I was washing cars at Saturn when I was 13 years old for a summer job. My dad worked there, and I would either ride up with him and then work in the wash bay doing, detailing and washing cars. And that was sort of how I got started working. I was doing that summer after 7th grade, making a little bit of money so I could pay for bikes and stuff like that. And that just sort of kept rolling. I actually worked for Saturn off and on from the time I was 13 till I was 21 or 22. So I was, that car company, that was sort of like the beginning of my, I guess, entrance into the automotive world. So I'm thankful for that. But yeah, that was kind of it. I just started working when I was young. I needed to buy parts for my bike, and I needed to buy Slurpees at 7-Eleven, and nobody else was going to give it to me. So I ended up working for it.
So what happened next then? So you're at this chop shop, you're apprenticing, and then how did you get into, opening up your own shop? Did that come first, and then you met Fred, or what happened?
Yeah,
there?
it all sort of rolled from there. I went from the chop shop closed, and then I think the chop shop closed in 90. Shoot, I don't even know, 98 or 99. This was a pretty good story. I actually, I was working for the chop shop. I had a airbagged and body dropped Nissan hard body called the Landscraper.
Nice.
It was just a beater Nissan truck that was an ex-landscaping truck that I bought for like $500, and then I went to town on it. The chop shop closed down on like, shoot, I don't know. We closed on like a Wednesday, and then I was like, well, I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from. So I jumped in my truck, drove it from San Diego to Las Vegas, sold the truck to a friend of mine out there for $4,000 or something. Got on an airplane in Vegas and flew to Phoenix, where my friend Courtney, who was a magazine editor for Mini Truckin' Magazine, or Street Trucks at that time, jumped on a plane from Vegas, went to Phoenix, got in Courtney's truck, and we drove to Texas to the show called Texas Heatwave. And that's where I ended up working a few extra days and made some money helping my buddy Rob finish a truck. So I was able to put money in my pocket, go to this show, worked at a shop for a few days, basically came home from that show the next Monday or Tuesday and paid off my Matco bill, which was, $2,000 or something for my toolbox.
Yeah.
And then I think the next day I ended up getting a job working for a place called Hot Rod City. So I didn't really need to sell my truck, but I figured I needed to make sure I could pay my bills in the meantime. So yeah, that was it. So I bounced around a little bit from like working at Saturn, working at hot rod shops. And then like right around 2000, I decided to open up my own shop called the Lowering Block. And that was just a little like 900 square foot shop. And I was doing airbags and chopping tops and doing body work and stuff like that. So that was sort of my first shop, and ran that for a few years. Went back to work for another shop for a couple of years, which was like this all-inclusive sort of, we did paint and body and stereos and interiors, and I was running the fab shop and chassis stuff there. Got tired of that, and then I opened up my last shop, which was Chappelle's Exhaust and Custom. And when I was working there, that's when I met up with Fred. That was probably 2009. And I was always sort of in with the magazine guys from the Mini Truckin' days and stuff. So I was in San Diego, so it was convenient for the LA guys that were like in Los Angeles. So I was always sort of doing tech installs and, helping those guys out with some of those projects. I was basically a hand model for a few years where I was like, installing this exhaust system for
step 2.
For 5. Yeah. So it was cool. That's sort of how I got in with Fred, was doing tech installs and stuff like that while he was working at Peterson's 4-Wheel and Off-Road.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like you've got a lot of experience in whether it's bag stuff, rock crawl, paint and body, fab. Like, that's really cool to have a big, vast bucket of knowledge and experience to be able to pull from in your own shop. And just, I think lots of people get so, they just want to go into one certain area, or that's just the way the shop is wherever they work. But to have so much experience in, sounds like a fairly limited time, that's pretty cool to be able to develop skill sets and be able to carry forward on the show in your own shop and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a blessing to be able to not turn away jobs, but sometimes it would be nice to not take on absolutely everything, just because you kind of get wrapped up into bigger projects than you probably should. That was kind of why at one point I opened up my shop as a muffler shop, because I figured, I can make $600 on a on an exhaust job that's in and out in one day, or I can do a little bit of paint and body and make $600 and it'll take a week and a half, you know?
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was why I sort of transferred into trying to make the last shop a muffler shop first and a fab shop second.
So you have,
and that worked pretty good, but I was always wrapped up in bigger projects and having to turn away work. So
yeah, that's probably got to be a struggle too. Did you have to turn away some pretty cool stuff just in the interest of time?
Yeah, but I mean, it's okay to turn stuff down every once in a while. Like, you don't have to say yes to absolutely everything. There were certain projects that you could see coming and be like, oh, this is just gonna go sideways, or you talk with a customer that's dreaming big but doesn't obviously have the money to follow through with it. So that's just part of owning a business, is being able to figure out the right customer for the job, really. I mean, you get all sorts of people coming in, but if you can tell right off the bat that they aren't the right owner for that car, or they aren't the right person to try and pull off this crazy build, then you got to know how to say no.
So you have to have a pretty good
You hear a lot of you hear a lot of stories about shop owners, and shop owners' story is always, oh, I'm just tired of chasing the dollar and trying to get money out of my customers. And I never had bad customers, and I never had a problem getting paid. And I think part of it is that they would say yes to absolutely everything, and they had the wrong customers for the jobs.
So you need to have a pretty good first impression of your customer then, when they come into the shop wanting to you to complete a project for them then.
Oh yeah. You gotta, like, I think that's probably one of the biggest things is figuring out how to read the customer and figure out where they actually want to go with this project, and not say yes to every part of it. Quite often I would be like, yeah, I think your project's cool, but why don't we start with, let's just bust out the rear suspension first and see where you want to go from there. And a lot of times we'd do like a portion of the job, and then they'd be out of money, and you get the car gone, and rather than it sitting in your shop waiting for payment and stuff. I think that was part of the biggest thing of owning a small little shop like I was doing, was sort of reading those customers and knowing when to say when. Yeah.
So through this whole journey, was there anybody that inspired you to get into this at a younger age, or kind of throughout? Do you have any inspiration for this in-depth journey that you've been on so far?
No, not really. I mean, my dad was in the car business. He was a manager and a sales guy, and my brother's in the car business. He's a finance manager for an Audi dealer. But neither of them are like enthusiasts, and neither of them are fabricators. So I couldn't really tell you where the drive to learn how to like work with my hands and make things myself came from, other than me being inherently cheap and not wanting to pay somebody else to do it.
It's a good starting point for that.
Yeah.
Be thrifty and find a solution to a problem, or to get something running at an affordable price.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, my first shop, the first fab shop I worked at, the chop shop, working for this guy named Brian Gendro, he was on the top of his game and like forefront of that industry at the time. So that was probably the inspiration to keep moving forward after that. And it just sort of rolled, you know. I wasn't anything from a younger age. It wasn't like my grandpa wasn't out in the garage with me, or I actually didn't even take like auto shop or auto body in high school. I took an electronics class instead, you know.
And that's why you were able to do all those stereos.
Yeah. And that was a fun time. I'm kind of looking forward to getting back into that a little bit as well. Partly with this mini truck that I'm building, see if I can still figure out how to make a box and amp rack and all that kind of stuff.
Are you gonna do the plexiglass front windshield and stuff? Make a competition truck?
No, heck no. I just want a good driver that's lower than everything else at the stoplight.
Yeah, exactly. Good. My next question is about the airbag suspension and like when you took on your first job doing one of those, or when you were in the process maybe of working with them with that rod shop on yours, like that's a big that's a daunting task, like learning geometry and angle, like everything that goes into putting an airbag suspension system in a vehicle. How did you push through that intimidation and that factor, and just like, was it the carrot at the end of the stick that did it for you, or like how did you manage that?
Well, I think we had, with working with that guy Brian, he had pretty good knowledge of how to set up suspension and geometry and stuff. And the other thing was we were doing it so early on that we were able to make mistakes and nobody knew any better. So a lot of it was trial and error. I mean, I've told people time and time again, like, I know what works and what doesn't because I've built all this stuff that didn't work. Like, I've done it and I've done it wrong. And I've seen why a 4-length that's got this separation or the bars in this location, why it doesn't work and why it does. So I think part of it is just being able to go through the trial and error phases, and having done enough of it now, I kind of got it to where I can set something up and it actually just works without having to go to a 4-length calculator or something along those lines. So yeah, it's really just, we were able to learn as we went because we were doing it so early on. And you see that with a lot of the guys that even like started building competition rock crawlers around that time. You saw some just wacky geometry and wacky designs that they did work, but they didn't work as well as the stuff they're building nowadays. And they were in the same boat. They were just sort of winging it and going for it and seeing how to make it happen, and being able to adapt and change along the way if it didn't work. So I think that's where those guys were building rock crawlers in the late 90s and figuring it all out. I was kind of doing lowriders at the same time, doing the same thing.
I think that speaks volumes, being able to kind of learn as you go and try something out, fine tune it, tweak it, go back to the drawing board. I think lots of people get into a rut of they're being afraid of failure, or they don't want to make mistakes, or they don't have the right answer, but to be able to just kind of dive in and be like, let's give this a shot. And, if something doesn't work, we need to tweak it, bring it back to the shop. That's kind of a cool process or cool, I guess, time in your life to be a part of, kind of almost like a pioneer or a start of something, and kind of setting the stage and being into that mindset of let's give it a shot. And if we need to revamp something or change how it works, we just throw it back in, and kind of that learn as you go mentality, I think, is huge. And I think lots of people should kind of embrace that, because it can lead to really creative and probably a growth or a skill set increase as you work on a project.
Yeah, I've always had this like catchphrase that is, it's just metal and there's a pile of it in the corner. So
I like it.
I mean,
That's a good point. Yeah.
If you're cutting on your truck, if you're cutting on your truck, it's like, if I screw this up, like I can learn from it and go back and fix it with this pile of scrap metal that's in the corner. Like, for the most part, I mean, yes, people do ruin cars and trucks, but for the most part, you can go back and repair your mistakes. It's not like working with wood where you can't like add another, you can't make that 2x4 any longer. You
don't have a wood stretcher at your shop?
Yeah.
Nope. I've been working on the tube stretcher, but those don't exist either. You just got to start over.
Patent pending, hey?
Yeah. So
So I want to, do you want to talk a little bit about Dirt Every Day and the like what have been some cool memories that you've had from that show, like like a cool build or like top experience of someone you got to meet through the show, anything like that? Any memories kind of stick out?
I think most of it is just be with the transitioning from the mini truck stuff to customs and then going into off-roading. Mainly it's the people that you meet and the places you get to go because of all this lifestyle or jobs that I've chosen. And, I've traveled to, I think I've been to every state in the country except like one or two. And the off-road industry really ramped that up because I was able to get in pretty early on Ultimate Adventure, which is an off-road field trip basically that Peterson's 4-Wheel and Off-Road puts together. So I was able to like go on this Ultimate Adventure trip, and I was befriended all these guys, and they saw that I was able to fix things on the fly. And because of that, I've been on that trip 12 times now. It's like a once in a lifetime experience that I've been able to do 12 times. So that just created these friendships along the way. And when we started doing Dirt Every Day, you'll find that we keep referring back to Ultimate Adventure.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
And that's because of the friendships that we've made along the way. And Dirt Every Day has sort of been able to continue rolling along because of those relationships. I mean, a lot of the times when we go to a friend's shop or a friend's off-road park, or it's because we've known those people through Ultimate Adventure. And it sort of allowed us to keep the show going, like sometimes on a lower budget than like if it was a big production company that didn't really have the relationships. I mean, the relationships are really why it like has allowed Dirt Every Day to keep rolling along as long as it does. And it's because of the friendships that like Fred and I have made along the way, and not having to, I guess, go at it with no background at all, like a lot of these production companies would be doing.
Have you experienced that at all, as far whether a magazine, like you said, doing like the tech installs and stuff, or doing the like any other type of show? Have you experienced that situation where you're like the company has no idea of what actually needs to happen, and you're like, that's not possible, or we need to do it this way?
Oh, yeah. That's kind of how it always goes. If you let somebody else get in charge for a minute, that's the struggle, is trying to work for a big company like MotorTrend and like having them sort of trying to like guide you along the way, but sometimes that guidance doesn't jive in like real world scenarios. So yeah, I've seen it firsthand a few times. And that's sort of when Fred will step up and be like, nope, we're gonna go work with this guy at this shop because we know we can get what we need done in the amount of time that we have, and go that route.
And I think by doing that too, you're sharing the importance on the show of those relationships that you formed too, right? And it. I know for me, just even watching you guys on the show, then it makes me kind of think about like, okay, I have this cool thing I want to do. Who can I do this with? And like you're looking to be surrounded by like-minded people. It sounds like that's been a big part of your journey.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the biggest thing really in all of this is sort of establishing the friendships along the way, and it's hard because you do end up with a lot of so-called friends, especially if if you have a TV show, you end up with a lot of like friends that aren't really friends. They're just, hang-arounds and stuff like that. But you always reach back to those core group of friends that you've been friends with forever. I mean, we've got like our group of cronies from the Ultimate Adventure that Fred and I are on a text string with, that we're texting with, on a daily basis almost. And then I've got my group of friends from the mini trucking days that I text with almost daily. When I was doing that mini truck and stuff, Fred was back in the day, being on the bottom of the totem pole at the magazines, and he was creating a lot of really strong relationships there with back when he was shooting the early competition rock crawling days and stuff like that. So I think pulling from both of our bags of tricks has allowed it to become what it has. And what's kind of cool is like I have my skill set of fabrication, and Fred has his skill set of like being able to find the right people for the job or the right company to work with. And that's sort of how that rolls along. It's like, okay, well, Fred's got friends at Ford, so maybe we can get a Ford Bronco to work on this time. And I've cut cars in half my entire life, so let's make this Ford Bronco into a pickup truck.
That's awesome.
And he has a pretty good skill set as far as the fabrication side goes. And he's able to jump in there and like basically handle anything that I could throw at him, which is pretty awesome, because it's not often that you find somebody that's not like a shop owner that can like pick up a problem and run with it and fix it. And it's pretty cool that he's, was a magazine guy, but he could hang in a shop with any of the best, fab guys or troubleshooters or whatever. So yeah, it's a pretty cool relationship there, that we were able to like pick and choose from our past to like make Dirt Everyday work.
How do you balance the show and your day job? That's got to be a bit tricky to kind of navigate and balance your everyday kind of tasks and jobs.
Yeah, that's probably been the hardest part, just because the show ended up, in the early days, it was maybe 4 days a month that I was supposed to be on the show. And then over the last couple of years, it ends up more like an average of 10 or 12 days a month on the show.
Wow.
So keeping a day job that still has health insurance and enough money coming through that has always been a challenge. And I've got a wife and kids, so it's harder than Fred, where Fred's single, so he can sort of, pay his way just on the Dirt Everyday salary, where I kind of needed to keep a second job as well.
Do you still run your own shop?
But I mean, no, I work for a company in Spokane.
Oh, okay.
Called Diesel Power Products at the moment, and they're a big online seller of diesel parts, and basically I work on the owner's rigs and the vehicles that the shop is building for promotional type stuff. So
that's cool.
It's not like a shop environment where we're cranking out, lift kits day in and day out, but it's more like, I always say, it's like being a private chef, but working on parts instead of making food.
Hey, that's actually that's a really cool scenario. How did you land that? Did you just make your own? Did you go in there and be like, hey, you need some rigs? I can do that.
Actually, I've been friends with these guys since 2012. They were on Ultimate Adventure as a sponsor for a few years, and they had come down to San Diego a couple of times, and were like, you should move up to Washington, and we got a job for you if you want it. So eventually that's sort of what I did. We had been looking all over the country for places to move to, and I came here because I had like 4 job offers, and I knew if Dirt Every Day wasn't there, I could make my way pretty easily. So that was kind of how that one worked out.
So kind of segueing into kind of some more of as we kind of wrap up with kind of some of these final questions. What's some advice you have for somebody getting into or wanting to get into the fabrication industry?
Well, I think nowadays any of the technical colleges are a pretty good route to go. You get there's quite a few more of them than there were back when I was in my teens. Colleges like UTI and WyoTech and stuff like that. Those are a good segue, but you can't ever beat like firsthand knowledge or working in a shop or just being in your own garage with a welder and trying to figure it out as you go. So I think a lot of it is that, like, figuring out how to like try a little bit on your own, try a little bit of actual classroom time, and then sort of figuring out where you want to take that later on down the road. I kind of feel like there's enough cool welding and fabrication jobs in non-automotive fields that it's not a bad idea to like keep cars your hobby and maybe go get a job for a construction company doing metal fab and stuff like that, and keep that your base pay and keep the cars on the fun side. It is kind of hard doing cars day in and day out and also doing them for your hobby.
Yeah, I noticed that after I went to WyoTech in 05, and after I came back we're from Canada, so it's a little different industries up here, but after I came back, I was working in a rod shop, and I had this 82 Trans Am that I was gonna like did the door handles, shaved them off, and then the marker lights and the antenna. And my boss was always on me. He was so passionate. He's one of those guys who's so passionate about it. He loves doing it during the day, and he loves doing it at night, like on his own stuff. But I just had a lot of trouble working on my own hot rod when I was working on everyone else's during the day. So That's what you said. That's a real thing. I wasn't just an anomaly.
Nope. Yeah. A lot of times you see some of the guys that are enjoying their cars the most, and they have nothing to do with cars for their day job. So don't feel bad if you get into a career that isn't automotive related, even if you're a car fanatic. So it's a lot of it is just adapting as you go. I get a lot of kids that would go to WyoTech, especially in Southern California, working around like the hot rod industry, and like we'd have all the desert race shops and stuff, and it was like the kids that would get out of WyoTech and go and try and get a job like at let's say like a big name fab shop that was doing like pre-runner trucks, they seemed like they never lasted, because they would get there and think that they knew everything. Yeah. And then they would get put into a job, and then they might know the skills like welding on a bench, but they didn't know the troubleshooting skills or the adapting and figuring out parts of the job, which are actually more important, I think. And that just comes with time. So that's kind of where I'm like, maybe rather than getting into a WyoTech or something and spending 30, 40 grand on a tuition, maybe go and get that job at the Valvoline quick change, and then go and take a ROP class that your high school provides, or an after hours like auto tech class or an auto body class. So I think there's a lot of options there where you can get some education and you can not spend money doing it, or not spend as much money doing it, and then sort of work your way into either a position as a low man on the totem pole at a fab shop, or just, get yourself a welder and start figuring it out on your own.
Depends on what works.
Yeah,
with,
there's a bunch of that. What's that?
I guess depends on how everybody's brain's wired. It might be like you were talking about, getting that firsthand shop knowledge and then going to maybe get some formal training, or it's kind of that combination of, and I guess everybody's different with how it works. And I think that's just trying to figure out what you want to do and the best way to get to it without going into debt.
Yeah, there's a lot of schools that offer an auto body class or a collision class, or stuff like that. And you might be able to get into it, and even if you want to be building, $100,000 pre-runner trucks, you can get that knowledge of welding and some basics through your high school, night school class, and it might not seem all that glamorous, but there's a lot of knowledge there, and there's good tools to learn how to use. So that was one of the things I did, was right out of high school. Even though I didn't take auto body or auto shop in high school, the next year I enrolled in the auto body class at night, and I stayed enrolled in that class for like 4 or 5 years. And a lot of it was just to learn some skills, but just to have access to tools that I didn't have at home. So if I was trying to, work on my friend's truck, and do like a step notch on the frame or something, and I didn't have a plasma cutter at home, I had one at the school that I was able to use. So I was able to like make parts there and do certain projects at the school and transfer that over to what I was doing in my garage as well.
That's some good advice, Dave.
And I don't know, I know you guys have a similar setup where you're doing a high school like fab shop, correct?
Yeah, that's me. And then we're doing welding and fab, and then Corey is a woodworking teacher.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that's
cool.
Getting into that, staying in this like technical skills kind of area, for someone who's wanting to get started in this field, what type of like specific skill sets do you think are the most important to develop when coming in?
I think it's really problem solving first and foremost. So the skill set you're gonna want the most is gonna be patience, and going into something with a cool head and figuring out how to fix it. That's all we do, is solve problems. We create our own problems and we have to solve them. So I think that's the biggest thing, is going into it with patience and a cool enough head to figure out how to solve a problem. If you can work on your car, or you can, install a stereo with something basic without losing your cool, without breaking the dash apart, and without throwing tools, then it's like, once you can get those basics down, then it's time to pick up the welder and figure out how to create. But I think first and foremost, you gotta practice your problem solving skills. And some of that you might get from a basic auto shop class, like Tune Up 101 at your community college or something like that, because you go through and you actually learn like how to troubleshoot and how to do diagnostics and the way to get from A to B. So that's probably your first skill set, is like making sure that you have the right state of mind to troubleshoot and to keep a calm head when things get sideways,
Yeah. So to solve some of those problems, you're probably going to eventually need some tools. What would be some top 3 starting out tools for somebody wanting to get into fab?
Um, First thing that I think everybody needs to buy is a torch set. Nowadays, that's not the most popular answer because everybody wants to get a CNC plasma table or something first. But I still say go and buy yourself a torch set, whether it's, I've had a handful of just cheapy Harbor Freight, oxyacetylene torches over the years, and they work great. You can cut with it, you can bend metal with it, you can weld with it, you can do pretty much anything with a set of torches. So you need a torch set, you need a 4-inch angle grinder. Make sure you get one with the paddle switch, not the thumb switch, because I've worked with guys that have basically cut their fingers off because of the side switch. You want the one that's got a paddle switch so that it stops spinning when you let go of the tool. So you need a torch, you need a 4-inch angle grinder, and you probably need a little 110 MIG welder to start out with, just because the versatility is amazing with what you can do with a MIG welder. I have had, I think for years, the one that I would always preach was the Hobart Handler 120. And now I think that model is up to a Hobart Handler 135.
Okay. That's the Harbor Freight stuff?
I haven't ever used the Harbor Freight welders. I know that they stepped up their game and the new stuff is pretty good. But I still like the Hobart welder. It's a division of Miller.
Oh, is it? See,
it's
I thought
good
that
quality.
Because I know we have up in Canada, there's the equivalent, I guess, to Harbor Freight is a store called Princess Auto, and they sell Hobart stuff. So that's why I thought it was Harbor Freight.
Yeah. No. Hobart is a division. It's the industrial division at Miller.
I didn't know that.
Basically, if you get a Hobart Handler 135 or a Hobart Handler 130, and you put it next to a Miller-Matic 135, they're the same machine, other than the Hobart machine has the settings are a click apart, and the Miller machine, they don't click. They're like an infinite adjustable in between settings. So they're really good quality. They aren't quite as fine tunable, but I found when you start welding, you sort of adapt how fast you move and how you work more than you need to be adjusting the machine itself.
Yeah, and that's a good way to learn too, right? With all these smart welders and stuff, it's almost cheating.
Yeah.
When you get going, it's cool. I had a opportunity to, I'm going for my journeyman ticket, and my mentor works out at this fab shop, and they had me in, and he's got this. We were working on this Miller. I think it was a 110, and no, sorry, it was a 350. And then he's also got this Feronius welder, and it's just night and day. But he's like, I'm not going to start you on this Feronius because that'd be cheating, right? You're not going to learn because you could it was night and day. It was incredible.
Yeah. Yep. No, there's a lot of good technology out there, and it is cool to it is good to learn as you go. I think you do need those basics though to start with, like a torch and a grinder and a welder. I think those are still relevant today. I know I still use them pretty much every day. But it is important to be willing to, grow and adapt with the times. It's probably a good idea to pay attention in that programming class in high school, just so that when you do step up to getting a plasma table or something later on down the road, or get a job where you're working in a fab shop and you need to run that plasma table, you have some knowledge of how to program those files,
That's a whole nother game in that.
That one is, yeah, and I haven't stepped up to that yet, so it's something that I may have to do here sooner or later. I'm still keeping it pretty old school with how I do things, and it works for me, but it might be a good idea to step up later on and and learn how to run one of those flame tables.
We could teach you.
All right. Can't be that hard. A lot of people are doing it nowadays.
There's a million YouTube videos too. That's how I learned to run ours at the school. So
yeah.
Final question. What is your, and you probably get asked this a ton of times, but what's your dream build? One that you haven't done yet.
Well, the dream build is probably a 38 Lincoln Zephyr.
Oh yeah.
That's like the car that I have always wanted that I'll probably never have because they're unobtainium. But yeah, that's sort of, I would love to do a 30s, late 30s, early custom, like tail dragger, lead sled, painted nice, the whole nine. So that's the dream car. As far as like off-road rigs, I don't know that I have a dream rig. Part of the problem with the off-road stuff is you use it and you beat it up, and hard to like build a dream rig and then realize you're gonna smash that door in and stuff like that. So the off-road trucks just sort of seem like they're almost a tool, or they're almost like disposable because of the nature of what you're doing with them.
Yeah, that's a good
feel
point.
like that 38 Lincoln is something that you build once and you own it until you die. So that's kind of that's like the dream car for me at this point in time.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the Builder Sessions and chat about your story and share some awesome insights into how people can get started.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me. I'm so stoked to see you guys up there teaching the youngsters about, woodworking and fabrication and keeping the fire alive.
For any, so here's your chance to promote. Where can people find you on social media, and do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow along on Dirt Every Day, you can find that over at MotorTrend Plus. And then if you want to see sort of my day-to-day action, you can follow me personally at Dirthead_Dave on Instagram. And I post similar stuff over on the Dirthead Shed over on my Facebook page. So that's sort of the insight into what's going on in my daily life, if you want to check that out. Otherwise, you can go and watch Dirt Every Day at MotorTrend.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links in the show notes of this episode, as well as all of our social media links too, that you guys can check out. So thanks everyone for listening. Thank you so much, Dave, one more time for coming on the show, and hopefully we can have you on again.
All right. Thanks for having me. I got to go get to work on this little Nissan.
Thanks, Hoff.
Thanks, Rosie.
And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right. You guys have a good one.